manages a portfolio of scholarly publications. She joined Brill in 2021 and has held editorial positions at Springer Nature, Amsterdam Publishers, Frame, and the Journal of Literary Studies, with additional experience at Elsevier. She holds an MA in Contemporary Literature from Utrecht University and a BA in English and Portuguese Language and Literatures from the University of Utrecht. She is joining us today from the Netherlands. And Iulia will speak for about 30 minutes or 40 minutes, followed by the Q&A session. You are welcome to raise your hand and unmute yourself at the time or submit your question to a chat who will speak for you. Please join me in welcoming Iulia Ivana. Iulia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you as well for putting together this event, for organizing it. It's been very nice working with you over the past couple of weeks or months. And yeah, basically, so my name is Iulia Ivana. I'm an acquisitions editor at Brill, now the Gruyter Brill, and I'm responsible for the Modern and Contemporary East Asian Studies program. We thought it might be useful to organize this workshop on academic publishing. It's basically going to be a workshop. Oh my God, sorry. My alarm sometimes goes just randomly in the middle of the day. A workshop on academic publishing. It's mostly directed at PhD students and early career researchers, but anyone who is interested in publishing a monograph or an edited volume will hopefully find it useful. I can share my screen perhaps and go through the slides I prepared. I'm going to try to be as concise as I can, but if I miss anything, you're welcome to just put the questions in the chat and we can go through them at the end. So I will share my screen. And someone please let me know if you can see it. Can you see my screen? I can't see you. I can only see my screen.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Okay. So I won't really talk much about myself because I was already very kindly introduced. But indeed, my academic background is in literary studies. I'm based in the Netherlands. I've been working in academic publishing for a couple of years now. Elsevier, Springer Nature, also at Amsterdam Publishers, which is a trade publisher. I have been with the Gruyter Brill since 2021, and last year in January I took over our program in East Asia, mostly modern contemporary East Asian studies, but we also have we publish a lot on pre-modern East Asia as well, so it's a bit of a misleading title. In my role, I coordinate many academic book series, journals, online products, focusing mostly in the humanities and social sciences. And within this portfolio, I also have our Brill series in Taiwan studies, which I'm going to introduce to you today, and also the International Journal of Taiwan Studies, which it's not the main, I'm not going to explain that much about how to, or talk that much about how to submit an article for a journal, but our website is pretty self-explanatory, and if you have questions at the end, I'll be happy to also talk about how to submit an article. A few words about Brill. So now the name of our publishing house is the Gruyter Brill because we merged with the Gruyter, a German publisher. We used to be an independent academic publisher. We were founded in 1683 in Leiden. Now that we merged with the Gruyter, we've become one of the leading publisher in the humanities and social sciences worldwide. And we have a global presence with offices across Europe, Asia, and North America mostly. For Asian studies at Brill, we have been around since the late 19th century, and I put on the right a photo with my colleagues in the Asian Studies department. We publish everything under the sun on Asian studies, from history, culture, languages of all regions across Asia. The department is led by Dr. Chunyan Shu, who's a publishing director for area studies, but she also acquires on pre-modernist Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, etc. Perhaps one thing that I can mention here already is that when you're looking for a publisher for your book, you don't always have to know exactly the main acquisitions editor for your title, but usually for your intended monograph edited volume. But usually most publishers will have a section on their website with the main contact with the contact details of the people working in the department that's possibly relevant for your monograph. So in this case, if you go to the gruyterbrill.com, you can go to Asian studies, and then you can check whether your research fits in my portfolio on modernist Asian studies or perhaps with one of my colleagues. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to first introduce to you our book series on Taiwan studies, just say a few words about what kind of books we publish in this series. I'm going to introduce the journal that we have, and then I'll take you step by step throughout the publishing journey. So from idea, proposal, through peer review, revision, production, and then what you can expect from us in terms of marketing, how you can promote your book yourself, and so on. For book series, so we have the Brill series in Taiwan studies, which is co-edited by Professor Nikki Alsford and Professor Mark Harrison. It's a very active book series. We've been receiving a lot of proposals for it recently, which is great. We publish mostly monographs and edited volumes on all aspects of Taiwan studies. We sometimes also accept proposals for translated books into English, and we're open to comparative research, where Taiwan is also an important plays an important component. The main audience for this series is, of course, academics, but we're also open to publishing books with a more general readership, and also books that are intended, for example, for policymakers. These are just, I put some covers of the most recent books that we've published in this series. So the last volume is Reorientating Taiwan, Ocean, Selfhood, and the Pacific by Nikki Alsford and Tihan Chang. And this is just the cover layout and the illustrations that we've added on the cover. And I've added here as well as some photos from recent events. So on the left corner, you can see Professor Christopher Joby. We published his book, Christian Mission in 17th Century Taiwan, last February, and we decided to organize a book launch here in Leiden, which went really well. Professor Joby gave a short lecture on his book, and we brought complimentary copies. We had a very lively Q&A at the end. And then on the right, we have the book launch for Tihan and Nikki's book in London at SOAS University of London. And I'll explain a bit more at the end what we do for promotion, but these are just some examples that some photos that I wanted to include early on. For the International Journal of Taiwan Studies, it's the editor-in-chief is Dr. Mingyan Raunsley. It's co-sponsored by Academia Sinica and the European Association of Taiwan Studies. So we were just at the conference in the UK a few weeks ago, which was very nice. It went really well. Lots of interesting panels. The International Journal of Taiwan Studies is publishes 2 issues per year. We release them both in print and online. It's a peer-review academic journal in English, dedicated to all aspects of Taiwan studies. We cover social sciences, arts, humanities, interdisciplinary topics, etc. And we follow a double-blind peer review process, which means that when you submit an article, we will anonymize it before we send it into peer review to avoid any personal biases. The peer reviewers won't know your names, and vice versa. If you just Google the name of this journal, you can very easily find it. And then on the website, you will see all the issues that we've published. Some of them are in open access as well. There is a tab with instructions for submissions, so you can easily follow those steps. We also have a tab with instructions for authors, which includes everything about formatting, if we're planning a special issue, exactly what kind of topics we're looking to publish on. And we also included on the website the email of the editor-in-chief. So if you have a topic in mind that you would like to publish an article, you can always email her. She is incredibly nice to work with, and she is very responsive. And yeah, she would be happy to answer your questions and guide you, if you want to publish an article in the International Journal of Taiwan Studies. Just a second, I'm gonna drink some water because my throat is getting very dry. Okay, sorry about that. Publishing with Brill. So I included a few slides in which I'm going to outline what the publishing process looks like, from proposals or from idea through how we evaluate the proposal, peer review, how to revise the manuscript for peer review and after peer review, what happens during production, publication, and so on. So the first step is, of course, submitting a book proposal. You usually do not have to write a book proposal by yourself. Most academic publishers will have their own guidelines for book proposals. So the first step for you as an author would be to find the acquisitions editor working in the general field in which you're looking to publish in. So for example, if you're working on Taiwan studies, East Asian studies at Brill, I would be the person to get in touch with, and I put my email at the end as well. The first email to a publisher is basically introducing yourself, mentioning a few sentences about your area of research, whether you would like to propose a monograph, an edited volume, perhaps an article. So just a very brief introduction, and asking the publisher if they have any guidelines for proposals. In our case, we do. We have a very simple document with a few questions asking about, basically what your book is about. So we have a general understanding, and we ask you to submit that along with your CV and 1 or 2 sample chapters of your intended book, if available, ideally. We then, the acquisitions editor or associate editor, the person that you would be in contact with, will send the proposal documents to the series editor or series editors. So in academic publishing, because we cover so many different topics, we as the publishers, we will not have the expertise or the research background in all the areas that we publish on, but we do have series on specific topics, and this series will have series editors that are scholars specialized in that particular research field. So we share the proposal documents with them, and they usually take about 4 to 6 weeks, in which they meet, they discuss the proposal, and they will get back to me or whoever will be your coordinating editor, either with either saying that the proposal is accepted, rejected, or requesting further revisions. In the proposal itself, so you will see the questions that we added there are very straightforward. So at the very beginning, we don't necessarily ask you to submit the whole manuscript. Sometimes it's not even necessary to have the book completed, as long as your proposal is comprehensive and it gives us a very good understanding of what you're trying to do, what your book is about. You do not have to have the manuscript ready. So we usually want to see one to two pages of just the overview of the manuscript. Ideally, you would explain the contribution you're making to existing scholarship. If you know of any other competing or existing titles on the topic, you can explain how your research differs or adds on top of that. If it's based on your own doctoral thesis, you should describe in the proposal what revisions you plan to make to change the thesis into a monograph, so into a market copy. I included in the next slide a few notes about how to go about revising your thesis into a monograph, and I know some of you will probably have some questions about that, so we can talk about that more at the end. A table of contents, if you have it already. If it's an edited volume, it's good to already mention the contributors' names and their affiliations. Again, sample material, so anything, either the introduction or a sample chapter that you're happy with, should be more than enough at the proposal stage. We also have some more practical questions in this in the guidelines for proposals that we ask for at the beginning. So in our monograph series or edited series in which we publish monographs and edited volumes, we have some requirements about the length. So at Brill, we generally publish manuscripts that are between 80,000 words and 130, maybe 150,000 words. So we try to make that clear at the very beginning, because sometimes we do receive proposals which are very interesting, but then we find that they're, I don't know, very short books, like 20,000-30,000 words, or huge books, 200 plus, 300 plus thousand words. And we generally don't publish outside of this range for various reasons, but I won't get into that now. You can include as well your intended submission date for the complete manuscripts for peer review. So I mentioned earlier that when you send a proposal, we do not ask you to have the manuscript ready. Authors usually submit a proposal, and then they take up to 6 months, a year to complete the manuscript for peer review. But we can always be in touch via email and decide on your submission. So this doesn't have to be, it's not a really strict requirement that you need to submit within 6 months or a year. The market, so what's your target audience? Generally, no, my colleagues are yelling outside. I apologize if you can hear them. The target audience and readership, it's usually, academics, other scholars working on that field. It depends very much if you're working on something general or on a very specific topic. These types of questions are actually helpful for us in publishing as well, to be able to market your book properly and to be able to include correct metadata when we publish the book. For example, when people will search for your book in library databases, we need to know exactly who the book is intended for, what kind of people would be interested in it, so we can we're able to, so we make sure that it reaches a wide readership. Exclusivity at the beginning, when you submit a proposal, you don't necessarily have to, you're not expected to submit it to one publisher only. But if we evaluate your proposal and we decide that we would like to continue to peer review, then we ask you for exclusivity. So we will ask that you withdraw your proposal from other publishers if it's still under consideration there, before we're able to move on with formal peer review. And your CV, we don't really have guidelines for that. It's just a brief document with your work experience and your publication history. Revising dissertation. So I had a quick look before the workshop started at some submitted questions, and I know that some of you are PhD students and are interested in publishing your dissertation or revising it into a monograph. So we don't publish dissertations as they are. You need to make some changes so that we can consider it as a monograph for one of our series. We in the publishing house, we don't really work with you on a content level to explain, you know, sentence by sentence what to do, how to change it, but we can always give you some suggestions of books that you can read. So for example, I included here this book, From Dissertation to Book, published by Chicago University Press in 2013. You can always ask your supervisors for their own suggestions, but essentially a book manuscript has a different audience, a different purpose, and a different structure from a dissertation. You are now writing with a larger group in mind. So you will be focusing less on the research process and more on the results. You don't need as much descriptive text. So generally speaking, you need to make the book appealing for a wider readership. So you don't need to convince just your peers that your dissertation is interesting, but you need to write with a larger audience in mind. You would be getting feedback from the peer reviewers as well, but it's most on how to go about revising the dissertation, but it's mostly up to you to, as the author, to make these revisions. So I don't, in-house, we don't really offer step-by-step feedback on how to go about this, but let's discuss that more in the Q&A, and then if anyone has other questions about that, we can. I'm always happy to talk to you about it. After proposal, so after the proposal is evaluated by Brill, we'll let you know within 4 to 6 weeks if it's been accepted, rejected, or if we ask you to make any revisions, and we would like to see it again before we move on with peer review. One interesting thing about our publishing house is that we can offer you a contract based solely on the accepted proposal. So we know from our experience working with authors that many of you need a publishing contract either for a job application, for obtaining tenure, or maybe you're applying for research funding. So we are able to offer you a contract early on, but the contract has in it a clause stating that publication is contingent upon positive peer review and the final acceptance of the revised manuscript by the series editor. So basically, we offer you the contract, but we need to see the final manuscript. It needs to go through peer review, and it needs to be formally approved after peer review. We decided to offer the contracts early on because we don't really accept proposals unless we know the book has a fair chance of passing peer review without any issues. So this usually gives us an advantage from other publishers, for example, because not most publishers would want to wait until the very last minute, until your book is officially approved for production, to offer you this contract. So they might be helpful for some of you. Peer review. So you've sent the proposal, it's been accepted, your contact person at Brill will be in touch with you and we'll let you know, we will send you guidelines after each step on how to prepare the manuscript for the next step. So we have documents with formatting and all of that. You don't really have to worry about these tiny details at the very beginning. For peer review, we mostly ask you to send the complete manuscript as a Word document, ideally anonymized. If you don't do it, we will do it. And we send your manuscript to 2 scholars, 2 reviewers, usually recommended by the series editor. I think someone has the mic open. Okay.
Yeah, I muted.
Okay, thank you. We aim for a double-blind peer review. So that means that the peer reviewers we invite won't know your identity and vice versa. I made a note here just to say that peer review, first of all, is not copy editing. So you will not be receiving line by line feedback, especially on things like grammar, sentence structure, and so on. Reviewers are mostly asked to comment on your content, your argument. Does the book make an original argument? Does it add to the existing conversation? And they can also let us know, for example, if they suggest copy editing. So most of our authors are not native English speakers, and we do strongly suggest having the manuscript copy edited by a native speaker before it's printed. But during peer review, you mostly will receive feedback on the content, not on things like grammar or syntax and so on. We ask the peer reviewers to submit the reports within 2 months. And once they are submitted, I will share them with the series editors again with your full manuscript, and ask the series editors to read them and to see if they agree with the peer reviewers' reports, because sometimes we can receive very conflicting reports. One reviewer is completely positive and recommends the book for publication, while the other one thinks it's the worst thing that's ever been written and wants us to reject it immediately. So in situations like that, we ask the series editors or board members to go over the manuscript, read the reports, and just mediate and let us know exactly what feedback should be communicated to the author. I or your coordinating editor will then send you the reports anonymized. And we will ask you to, it can be, so the reports can be completely negative, in which case we would reject the manuscript. It could be recommended publication, but with asking for revisions, or they can both be positive, and then we can just go ahead with production. So there's nothing that you need to edit, and yeah, there's no revisions asked. So I would send you the 2 review reports along with this author guide that we have here, which explains everything about formatting, how to prepare the final version for production, and so on. And I will ask you to send me a revised manuscript. Let me see if I missed anything. No, to send me your revised manuscript with another document in which you explain the changes that you've decided to make after peer review. So we will never ask you to implement every single feedback that the reviewers asked of you. But in this other document, we ask you to simply respond to the reviewer's feedback. So you can say, I've decided to implement this, this, and this. This I didn't agree with for these reasons. When you send us your revised manuscript, we will read it. One board member will read it cover to cover. And basically, we'll check if they're happy with the revisions, if we still need copy editing, and if they have any other feedback for you before we go ahead with production. Sometimes, if we're not completely sure, we might invite a third reviewer, but we don't really do that this late, just because it delays the process quite a bit, and we prefer to either ask one of the board members, one of the series editors, or people working on the series to just read it and get back to us within a month. So if, let's say, your revisions are, we're happy with your revisions, there's nothing else for you to do, we can start production. Production itself takes about 5 months. What happens during production is we have your book typeset. You will work with a dedicated production editor who will explain how to create the index. They will send you page proofs, cover proofs. You can check the design if you're happy with it. You can check what we call the blurb, so that text on the back of the cover, the marketing text, your author bio, and so on. And then the book is published. Once the book is published, I would be in touch with you again to send you your free copies. And then at this point, we can start discussing a bit about how we can market your book, if we want to plan a book launch, and so on. I can already skip this link, this slide, because I think I added a few more slides about promotion at the end. So just to summarize briefly, proposal on our end, 4 to 6 weeks. We read your proposal documents, your sample chapter, and your CV. We can accept it, ask for revisions, or reject it. You don't have to have the book ready. If the proposal is accepted, you work on finalizing the book for peer review. Here, we don't really impose any deadlines. You can take as much time as you need to. It helps sometimes to discuss with your coordinating editor at the publishing house and decide on a deadline. But if life gets in the way and you need a few extra months, that's completely fine. Peer review on our end is 3 to 4 months. So I will get suggestions for scholars working on a similar topic, anonymize the book, send the invitations, ask reviewers to submit in 2 months, and then another month to 2 months, we review the reports and add our own comments. Everything is being sent back to you. You take, again, as much time as you need to revise your book. Once it's revised, we do a final check, about 1 to 2 months. If everything is approved, we move to production, 5 months, and then marketing and sales is an ongoing process. Just a second. What we do to promote your book. So this is actually one of my favorite, I think my favorite, the 2 parts of the process is first reading the proposal, because it's just, we publish on so many different and interesting topics, and it's always nice to learn about something new, sometimes, especially because the topics are so varied. We, again, our academic backgrounds are not on all these things that we publish on, so it's very exciting. But then the second thing that I love about my job is getting to promote the books that we publish. What we do is we go to a lot of conferences. We, of course, we have connections with public and university libraries, and we make sure that they get a copy of your book. We do a lot of promotional social media. We have a marketing department who they write articles, interviews, they do podcasts with our authors and editors. With my authors, I work a lot, and we try to find book reviewers. So we find people who would be interested in receiving a free copy of your book, and then they would write a book review for a journal or an academic publication. Of course, we go to conferences quite a bit, and we always bring printed copies of the books. Interestingly, we haven't been allowed to sell at conferences, so we just give the books away for free. I bring them for a display, and I need to keep them for display for the whole duration of the conference. So I just ask people to, if they're interested in a book, they write their name down, they reserve the book, and then at the end of the conference, they can come pick it up for free. And it's very lovely to see people's reactions when they hear that our books, which tend to be quite pricey because we're an independent publisher, so we don't get any subsidies for example, from the university or from anywhere else. We are able to give these books away for free at these events. And then with your acquisitions editor, you can always discuss if you'd like to do a book launch or any other things you can do together to make sure that your book is promoted widely. For open access, I'm going to keep it very simple. Usually, so at Brill, we publish an ebook with a hardback simultaneously. We release both formats at the same time. The ebook can be published in open access, which is something that academic publishing is very interested in nowadays, because first of all, it helps with visibility. So your book tends to get more citations. It's easier for readers to find the ebook because it's freely available online. Usually the fee for open access is 10,000 euros for a book that's within the length that I mentioned earlier, between 80 1,000 words and 150. We never expect you to pay this out of pocket, of course. We have a dedicated open access department who will work with you to apply, for example, for a grant or for funding to publish your book in open access. We can issue the contract early on and just help with any documentation you may want. I'm gonna keep it simple about open access now. If you have any questions, you can let me know, or just send me an email afterwards, and I can give you more information about that. And that's it. I think I hope I didn't take too much. I was trying to rush a bit at the end, but this is my email address. I also put there my LinkedIn if anyone would like to connect. And if I didn't cover something that you're interested in, please feel free to just write your questions in the chat. And I have stopped sharing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. You managed time very well. So
thank you.
so
I was a bit scared. I couldn't see.
It's like 8:39 for me. So it's like
Okay.
you take like 35 minutes exactly we discussed before. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
so we are now opening the floor for question. If you have any question, you can just raise your hand. You raise your virtual hands, and we can see it, and maybe me or Eileen will unmute you. So, or you can send in the chat. We can read it for you. Okay.
Oh, I just saw that you asked me to hide the Zoom message. I'm sorry. You should have told me because I couldn't see the messages.
No, this is something idea but I saw it, but I just see next slide. The mark didn't hit. Didn't like in short.
Would it be possible if you share your PowerPoint with the attendees here today?
I think with the attendees, it should be fine. Yeah. It's
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
No one raised hand. So maybe I ask the first question. Yeah, you mentioned like the one exciting part of your work is reading proposal. So I'm interested, like from your experience, is there like a particular book or proposal that you found like especially interesting? So you like have a memorable of it.
Well, it really depends because first of all, I can tell when a proposal is written with ChatGPT. And with the use of AI, it's an ongoing conversation for us as well, especially because we want to publish translations as well, but we unfortunately in-house we don't have the costs to cover the translations. So we're debating whether, for example, it's fine for authors to use AI to help with these things. And in my personal opinion, I'm doing a parenthesis here to your question. I can tell when a proposal is written with the ChatGPT, and sometimes authors are honest, and if they translate their work with AI, they tell us. I don't think there's any problem with that, as long as the book itself, content-wise, is original and it's not, you didn't use ChatGPT, or AI for that. What makes a proposal interesting is just clarity, of course, originality, which is not something that I decide. For me, when I first read a proposal, I need to understand, okay, does this fit in my portfolio? Is it on something that, on topics that I usually publish on? Then I share it with the series editors, and then they comment on things like originality, if it's too general, if it's too niche. But what makes this, you don't really have to make your proposal interesting. You need to make it clear, and you need to make sure you answer all the questions. It's not a matter of being interesting or not. It's more like, do we get the main argument that this author is making? Is the proposal, do we get all the information in this that about this book? Is the word count there? So if we have questions and you make sure you answer them as clearly as possible, that's great. So we don't have to follow up with the authors via email afterwards.
Okay, I see some question in the chat. So, Yang Shu Yun, sorry if I pronounced it wrongly. She asked, or he asked, can you tell us more about what to keep in mind when we transform a dissertation into the monograph?
Yeah, so as I was saying, I coordinate hundreds of books within a year. So I don't really work with authors on a content level. So I will not be able to tell you exactly like this chapter needs to be revised like this. What we do as publishers is we can send you resources, so specific books that you can read that explain exactly how a dissertation is turned into a monograph. We can, if you have specific questions, we can then discuss them with the series editors if they accepted your book. But it's very difficult to answer this question so generally. Basically, it needs to be interesting to a wider audience. That's the main thing. So you need to write it with a bigger audience in mind. It needs to be less descriptive. Other than that, I don't really think I have specifics, because all dissertations will be too specific. It's very hard to be able to answer this question without exactly looking at your dissertation and giving clear examples. But usually it helps before you submit a proposal to a publisher to go to your PhD supervisors and also ask them. So for example, just ask them, how would you answer this question in the manuscript questionnaire about revising the dissertation? Because we're not really looking for you to give us 3 pages of this is exactly what I'm going to do chapter by chapter. We just want you to understand that the scope needs to be broad enough for a monograph that's interesting for the whole scholarly community and not just for your 2 supervisors. I know it's not an ideal answer, but from a publisher's perspective, that's all we have, unfortunately.
Okay. Another friend, Yang Su Shen. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. I cannot speak English in Chinese way. Yeah, she asked, thank you for the talk. I have questions. Some journals are faster in terms of publication process and some are notoriously slow. Is there any way to know how long it actually takes for each journal other than from experience? Yeah,
there's
you
no way
can
to know.
answer.
But what I can tell you is also for generally choosing your publisher, you test it. How do you say? You test it by emailing the person who's responsible for the journal or the acquisitions editor, and you just see before you submit how quickly do they even get back to you. Do they respond to your questions, or do they take 3 months to even respond to a general question? I think what delays the publication process, honestly, well, it could be the people working on the journals that they're just too busy, but the main factor is the availability of peer reviewers. So I'm struggling with this myself as well, because I acquire, but I also work with my authors day to day through proposal, peer review, and so on. And where we tend to be stuck, and I know that happens with journals as well, is when we invite peer reviewers. Some of them respond, but then they need extra time. Some of them take a month to even respond and accept our invitation. The worst is when they accept to peer review your article or book. 2 months go by in which you think that, okay, they're reviewing it, and then they get back to you saying, sorry, I cannot complete this, or they just disappear completely. So these things are very difficult to know in advance how peer review will go. I will just say, both for a book but also for a journal, just try to be in touch with the coordinator of the journal or of the program first via email. So make yourself known to them before submission. I mean, if everyone did that, then it would be completely overwhelming, I guess, for the journal editors, but it's just a way to test how responsive they are. And then once you submit it, it's mostly peer review. It's a matter of luck, I would say, because you will be authors. Sorry, I'm just going to finish this and then we can move on to the next one. You'll be authors, but you will also be invited as peer reviewers at some point. And you will see that sometimes you just cannot submit in time. and it's frustrating for the author, but that's just how it works.
Okay, I think one friend just raised her hand. I'm not sure whether you can just unmute yourself or I need to unmute her.
If that is me,
Yeah, we can hear you.
okay.
You can just.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the inspiring talk. And I really like you break.
Oh, you're muted again.
Sorry. Thank you for your talk, and I really appreciate you broke all the process step by step. That's pretty clear. My question is about like actually like from your talk, it seems like that's the very first step is like the author submit the proposal. But my personal experience also, there's something like you went to a conference and somehow an editor approach you and say, "Oh, I'm interested in your topic, so could we talk about it?" Or even even a little bit weird, like they send you an email. They didn't talk to you on spot, but they send you email. So I was wondering if that's the thing. Like, could you tell us about that, all these kind of process to start all this process, in addition to the submit the proposal by yourself? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and thank you for your kind words. So as an acquisitions editor, every year I take a look at my portfolio, and I'm like, okay, I published all of these books, but I see a lot of new master programs on this topic and this topic and this topic. And when I go to conferences, I see that people are talking about, I don't know, these topics, and I haven't really published much on them. So if I don't actively receive proposals from an author, I literally introduce myself to people or go to conferences. And if someone is working on something that I think is really interesting and would be nice to be published, I just go to that person, introduce myself, and ask them if they would be willing to work with us. So that's something that publishers always do if they notice that there's a gap in their portfolio. A gap, that sounds very corporate. If basically, if sorry, sometimes I have to change the way I talk based on if I'm, anyway. If we think about a topic that we would like to publish on and we haven't yet, we just introduce ourselves to authors and we approach. I think it's a bit more awkward when you just send an email out of the blue and ask people to publish with you. At conferences, it's just more natural. It also that happens more, of course, to more senior professors. So if we're familiar with your work, if we have seen you, presenting at different conferences, and we really want you to publish with us, then we will approach you. But that's how it goes usually. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have some questions from the chat. Kathleen Tai asks, generally, how many images are allowed in the monograph? And how does your publisher help with the process for clearing the copyright?
Yeah, we don't have any restrictions on illustrations. You can use as many as you want. We also have so I have a colleague who works on art history, and she really publishes books that are full of illustrations. In my portfolio, they just have to make sense. Of course, you can't just add an illustration just because it's beautiful, but maybe you refer to it. It's useful for the argument that you're making. But we have no limits. You can include hundreds if you want to, as long as they have a certain quality. So I think we have 300 dpa anyway. So as long as they would look good in print, and as long as you have the copyright permission to use them. And we do help with the process of obtaining copyright in terms of it's your responsibility as the author to reach out to the copyright owner and ask for permission. But sometimes they would ask either for a complimentary copy or to be mentioned in the acknowledgement, or to receive, I don't know, a letter of confirmation from the publisher that we intend to publish your book. So in that sense, we help you with information. If they ask for payment, we're not able to, because we publish so many books with so many illustrations that we can't really commit to offering money for every single illustration. But usually they don't. They just ask for an acknowledgement or some sort of contract and things like that. So me or your coordinating editor will be able to help you with that.
Okay, the next question is from Fu Yuwen, and As does the author need to have an institutional position? For example, my retired colleague is interested in proposing a monograph and or an edit volume with me, full-time university professor.
No, it's not important, really. I mean, we do publish mostly academics, but as long as your monograph or edited volume is, makes an original contribution, we don't really look at your CV, like for example, if you're retired or if you're out of academia. But I mean, most of our authors have a PhD or are professors, but it's not really a requirement. So we will look at the content of the book, not at your institutional position.
Okay, I think next question is from NJ Young, asking, I was wondering if Brill also publishes titles in art, education, or queer studies that aren't specifically focused on Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
yeah, we do. So we are a publisher of a lot of topics in the humanities and social sciences. Definitely art, education, and queer studies. Actually, I'm looking myself to set up a series on gender. I have a series on what is it? Women and gender in China, but I want to set up a series on gender studies across East Asia, more specifically. So as an author, you don't have to spend that much time researching particular series. I think if you find at conferences, if you manage to establish a connection with a person and they seem helpful and willing to respond to your questions, you can just be in touch with that person via email. And if the book that you're proposing does not fit their portfolio, I know my colleagues, so I know exactly who's working on art, who's working on education. Queer studies can be either queer studies by area or generally speaking. If you, for example, have a book on one of these topics, you can get in touch with me if you want to publish with Brill. I will ask some more questions about the book, and then if it doesn't fit my series, I'll put you in touch with someone else who works or who has a better series for it. But we definitely publish in everything that you mentioned. Thank you.
I think that's all so far. Is anyone going to ask
Can I
questions?
ask one? I'm just curious. For your experience as an editor, you read a lot of proposals. Just from your perspective, do you notice any trends in Taiwan studies or East Asian studies, and what topics in those areas you are looking forward to publish more on?
Yeah, in Taiwan studies, a lot of indigenous studies, I would say. We receive a lot about that. Generally, culture, anything on film, literature, we receive quite a bit of that. In East Asian studies, I don't know if I'm in East Asian studies, I don't necessarily see a trend per se, because we work with authors from so many different research areas. But I tend to receive proposals on a specific topic, then I see I don't have it represented in my portfolio, then I start doing some research to set up a new series on that topic. So, for example, this past year, I've been receiving a lot of proposals on cinema studies, so film. I didn't really have one particular series in which to place them. So that was an indicator for me that, okay, I need to do some more research about it. And I just set up a new series on Asian screen and cinema, it's called. But for Taiwan specifically, I would say indigenous studies is, we get a lot of proposals on that. And anything related to international relations, that's also quite big for Taiwan studies. But we're not looking for something in particular. Again, we're just looking for original research. We're not really chasing trends.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we are going to wrap up. So thank you so much, Iulia, for your insightful talk, and thank you to everyone who joined us from across 3 time zones, or maybe more.
Thank you. Indeed.
Yeah, we hope to see you at our next event Eileen, do you want to like advertise for the annual conference again?
Yeah, absolutely. So our conference will take place on June 26th to 28th at Indiana University, Bloomington. I know it's a middle of nowhere. Well, it's a lovely town, but our program and registration link is online now, so I encourage you to check it out. It's a pretty good lineup, and I would like to thank Iulia for giving this talk and Sakai for moderating. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I also just want to say briefly to thank you both for inviting me. I think this is a really nice opportunity. When I go to conferences, I always get this feedback from authors that they have no idea where to start when it comes to publishing. If I was a little bit nervous, I apologize. Public speaking is not my forte, but I'm trying to, to do it anyway. And yeah, be in touch if you have any other questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you all.
Thank you.
I want to clarify, Indiana is not the middle of nowhere because Minnesota is the middle of nowhere.
Wait, what?
Yeah, thank you everyone
Yeah.
for participating. So I think that's our ending. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Yulia. Let's keep in touch. Thank you.
Bye
See
bye.
you.
Have a nice
Thank
day,
you.
evening.
Bye.